In the next 5 seconds, I'm going to reveal a truth you won't be able to believe. High above the open ocean, US Navy pilots train in an environment where nothing is left to chance. Every movement in the sky follows known rules. Lift counters gravity, thrust produces speed, objects fall unless something holds them up. This is the foundation of flight. And it is why what happened next should not have been possible. During what was supposed to be a routine training mission, a small shape appeared ahead of the aircraft. At first, it seemed insignificant, a distant point against an empty sky, something easily dismissed as sensor noise or atmospheric distortion. But it did not behave like noise. The object held position, while the fighter jet tore through the air at high speed, battling drag and gravity with immense power. The object remained perfectly still. It did not drift, it did not wobble, it did not adjust, it simply hovered. There were no wings, no exhaust, no visible propulsion. As the pilots halted course, the object responded, not by turning or accelerating, but by changing position instantly. One moment it was ahead, the next, it was somewhere else entirely. There was no visible movement connecting the 2 points. Physics demands continuity. This object ignored it. Sensors locked on without difficulty. Radar tracked it. Infrared systems captured it clearly. Yet the data made no sense. Velocity readings jumped from 0 to extreme values without acceleration. Altitude changes occurred without climb or descent. The cockpit remained calm. No alarms. No warnings. Only numbers that contradicted themselves. Then came the first unmistakable violation. The object dropped straight down. Not falling. Not accelerating. It slid vertically through the air at a constant speed, unaffected by gravity. There was no sonic event, no pressure wave. The air did not react. And then, mid-descent, it stopped. Suspended. Below it, clouds drifted naturally. Far beneath them, the ocean rolled endlessly, shaped by wind and mass. Gravity continued to rule everything in the scene except the object. At closer range, its surface revealed nothing familiar. Smooth, seamless, featureless, sunlight reflected unevenly, bending in ways that made depth difficult to judge. At times, it looked solid, at others, strangely detached from space. The pilots realized something important. This was not a malfunction, not an illusion, not a misidentified aircraft. It was something operating by different rules. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the object moved upward, reversing gravity with the same effortless control. It passed through cloud layers without disturbance. No turbulence, no heat, no interaction at all. And then, it vanished. Not retreating, not accelerating away. Simply gone. The sky returned to normal. Systems stabilized. The aircraft continued its flight. But something fundamental had changed. Because for a brief moment above the ocean, gravity had been optional. And someone, or something, had demonstrated that it did not need to obey it. What turned the encounter from strange to undeniable was not what the pilots saw, but what their instruments recorded. Modern fighter jets are built on redundancy. Radar, infrared imaging, targeting pods, and telemetry systems constantly verify one another. When one sensor lies, the others usually expose it. False readings do not survive cross-checking for long. This time, they did. Radar locked onto the object without difficulty. It tracked position cleanly, yet the velocity data behaved irrationally. One moment, the object registered as stationary. The next, it showed speeds that should have produced extreme aerodynamic effects. There was no acceleration curve, no transition, just numbers jumping between incompatible states. Infrared systems confirmed its presence. Against the cold upper atmosphere, the object glowed brighter than its surroundings. But the heat signature made no sense. It pulsed irregularly, without pattern, and without the telltale exhaust trail associated with propulsion. There was energy, but no evidence of energy being expelled. As the object passed through thin cloud layers, the clouds did not react. No turbulence, no distortion, no thermal disruption. The object occupied the same space. Yet the atmosphere behaved as if it were not there. Inside the cockpit, the soundscape remained calm. Wind roared steadily past the fuselage. Engines vibrated with controlled power. Electronics hummed softly. No alarms sounded, no warnings appeared. The aircraft believed everything was normal. Yet the data logs told a different story. Altitude readings fluctuated slightly whenever the object moved closer. Velocity indicators jittered without corresponding changes in aircraft motion. Targeting systems hesitated for fractions of a second, then stabilized again, as if correcting for inputs they could not reconcile. The interference was subtle, but precise. When the object increased distance, the anomalies vanished instantly. When it approached again, they returned. The correlation was exact. This was not random noise or system degradation. It was interaction. The pilots noticed something else. The interference never escalated. Systems were never overwhelmed. Nothing shut down. Whatever influence the object exerted, it stopped short of disruption. It felt measured. At one point, the object disappeared from visual range entirely. For a brief moment, the sky returned to emptiness. But the sensors continued to record something, faint, unstable, difficult to lock onto. Then the object reappeared below the aircraft, closer than before. Again, it hovered. Again, it moved vertically without acceleration. Again, the sensors struggled to describe what they were seeing. The most unsettling realization came slowly. The systems were not failing. They were being presented with something they were never designed to interpret. Every rule embedded in their logic assumed that objects obey gravity, inertia, and continuous motion. The object violated all three. And yet, the sensors continued to function. They recorded. They logged. They preserved evidence. Nothing about the encounter required belief or interpretation. The data existed, stored in systems built to survive combat and scrutiny. It could be reviewed, replayed, analyzed. But it could not be explained. The object was not hiding. It was not jamming. It was not masking itself. It allowed itself to be measured, just not understood. And as the flight continued, one conclusion became impossible to avoid. Whatever this object was, it did not fear observation. It seemed to expect it. As the distance closed, uncertainty disappeared. This was no longer a faint shape on a screen or an abstract reading buried in sensor data. The object was now close enough to be seen clearly with the naked eye. And what the pilots observed removed any remaining doubt that this was a conventional aircraft, or even an advanced experimental one. There were no wings, no rotors, no exhaust ports, nothing that suggested lift, thrust, or aerodynamic control. Its surface appeared smooth and continuous, without seams, markings, or access panels. Sunlight reflected across it in a way that felt subtly wrong, sliding across the surface instead of bouncing cleanly. The reflections did not sharpen as distance closed. They softened, as if depth itself were uncertain. As the jet adjusted its heading, the object responded instantly. Not by banking, not by turning, not by accelerating. It simply changed position. One moment it occupied a point ahead of the aircraft. The next, it was somewhere else entirely. There was no visible path between those locations. No blur, no trace left in the air. The pilots understood the implication immediately. This was not movement. It was relocation. At one point, the object drifted laterally across the sky while maintaining perfect orientation. Aircraft cannot do this. Even the most advanced drones must tilt and correct to move sideways. This object remained perfectly aligned as it slid across open air, indifferent to inertia. Then it stopped. Completely. The aircraft continued forward, engines roaring, air tearing past the fuselage. The object hung motionless, untouched by turbulence. Seconds passed. The stillness became oppressive. Below, clouds continued their slow, gravity-driven motion. Far beneath them, the ocean rolled endlessly, obeying every rule it always had. The object obeyed none of them. For a brief moment, the object appeared above the aircraft, without climbing. There was no upward motion to track. It was simply there. Sunlight struck it from a new angle. Yet no shadow crossed the jet. The absence of a shadow was impossible to ignore. It suggested either extreme altitude, impossible geometry, or something far more difficult to explain. As the pilots adjusted course again, the object remained fixed relative to the cockpit view. The sensation changed. This was no longer pursuit. It felt like alignment. No matter how the aircraft moved, The object maintained its position effortlessly, as if aware not only of the jet's location, but of the pilot's perspective itself. Then came the moment that shattered any remaining attempt at rational explanation. The object accelerated. Not gradually. Not with thrust. Instantly. It crossed an enormous distance in less than a second without producing a sonic boom or shockwave. The camera barely managed to keep it in frame. The sky did not react. The air did not compress. Sound remained unchanged. Physics had been bypassed. When the object stopped again, it did so far ahead, hovering once more, unchanged by the impossible motion it had just executed. The pilots could only watch. For the first time, the object altered its orientation. But it did not rotate through space. Its alignment shifted without motion, as if its relationship to direction and gravity had been recalculated rather than physically changed. The surface reflections adjusted accordingly, bending light in ways that made distance and shape difficult to judge. Then, without warning, the object vanished. Not retreating. Not accelerating away. Simply gone. The sky returned to emptiness. Instruments stabilized. The aircraft continued forward. But the certainty remained. What the pilots had witnessed was not a misidentification. Not a sensor glitch. Not an illusion. It was something that moved without inertia, ignored gravity, and treated space as optional. And whatever it was, it had allowed itself to be seen. If everything up to this point challenged aerodynamics, what happened next challenged gravity itself. The object reappeared beneath the aircraft, far below the cloud layer, hovering above the open ocean. From this altitude, gravity's influence was unmistakable. Waves rolled endlessly, shaped by wind and mass. Clouds drifted and stretched naturally across the sky. Everything behaved as expected. Everything except the object. It did not descend toward the water. It did not rise away from it. It remained fixed at a precise point in space, perfectly stable, as if gravity simply did not apply. Then it began to move upward. Not like a rocket. Not like an aircraft climbing. Not even like a balloon rising. It slid vertically, straight up, at a constant speed. There was no acceleration, no increase in heat, no disturbance in the surrounding air. The clouds it passed through did not react. They did not part, swirl, or deform. The object passed through them as if they were not there. The jet circled cautiously, engines working harder to maintain position. The contrast was undeniable. The aircraft followed physics. The object ignored it. At a certain altitude, the object stopped. Mid-ascent. Suspended again. From the cockpit, the pilots could see the ocean far below and the sky stretching endlessly above. Gravity continued to shape everything in the scene except the one thing that should have been most affected by it. Then the object descended. But it did not fall. There was no acceleration, no increase in speed. It moved downward at the same controlled rate as before, as if gravity were not pulling it, but merely allowing it to choose direction. At closer range, sunlight revealed subtle changes across its surface. Reflections bent slightly, behaving inconsistently with angle and distance. The object did not appear to rotate, yet the way it reflected light suggested internal motion or spatial distortion. Once more, it stopped. Then, without pause, it reversed direction again. Upward. Faster this time. The transition was instantaneous. There was no curve connecting downward motion to upward motion. No moment of deceleration. Momentum did not exist. The jet could not follow. Engine noise increased as the aircraft climbed. But the object pulled away effortlessly, gaining altitude without resistance. Within seconds, it was far above, hovering once more, perfectly still. No known technology behaves this way. Even the most advanced theoretical propulsion systems require interaction with mass, fields, or space-time itself. They require energy expenditure. They leave signatures. This object left none. Its behavior suggested something deeply unsettling. It was not fighting gravity. It was not countering gravity. It was operating as if gravity were irrelevant. And then, slowly, it began to fade. Not by moving away. Not by shrinking into the distance. Its surface dimmed. Its outline softened. It did not blur like a fast-moving object. It simply became less observable, as if slipping out of the range of detection rather than leaving the sky. Within moments, it was gone. The aircraft continued forward, the sky returned to normal. Clouds drifted, the ocean rolled below, gravity reclaimed authority over the scene. But the violation lingered. The pilots were left with a question that refused to settle. If gravity can be ignored so completely, what else can be bypassed just as easily? After witnessing gravity reversed with effortless control, the pilots did what training demanded. They tried to pursue. The jet accelerated hard, engine pitch rose sharply as thrust increased. Vibrations passing through the airframe. Air screamed past the fuselage as the aircraft pushed toward its operational limits. This was speed achieved through fuel, force, and resistance, the most honest expression of physics at work. Ahead, the object waited. It did not flee. It did not maneuver defensively. It simply remained where it was, suspended in open sky. As the distance closed, the imbalance became unmistakable. The jet required constant correction, small adjustments to maintain stability, to counter drag, to preserve lift. The object required none of it. It held position without effort, untouched by the violent forces shaping the aircraft's motion. When the pilots adjusted their heading to align, the object shifted sideways. Instantly. Not as a turn. Not as a bank. It relocated, maintaining perfect distance without visible movement. The air between its previous position and the new one showed no disturbance. No trace of passage existed. The pilots increased thrust again. The jet surged forward. Speed climbed. The engines roared louder. The object responded by occupying a point farther ahead, without accelerating. Without turning, without leaving any sign of motion. The separation remained constant. The pursuit was already over. At another moment, the object appeared behind the aircraft. There was no interception arc, no overshoot, no indication that it had traveled around the jet at all. It was simply there, pacing the aircraft with exact precision. This was not a chase. It was control. No matter what the pilots attempted, the outcome remained the same. When the jet climbed, the object climbed higher. When the jet leveled off, the object held altitude. When the jet accelerated, the object did not, but distance remained unchanged. Velocity meant nothing to it. At close range, the aircraft passed beneath the object once more. The jet's turbulent wake twisted violently behind it, a visible signature of energy, airflow, and force. The object hovered above, unaffected. The wake did not reach it. The air did not transmit disturbance upward. No shadow crossed the aircraft. No pressure change registered. It was as if the object existed in the same space, but not in the same physical layer. Then, abruptly, it disengaged. Not by accelerating in any visible direction. Not by climbing or diving. It simply occupied a distant point in the sky. One moment it dominated the forward view. The next, it was already far beyond any possible interception. No sonic boom followed. No shockwave rippled outward. The sky absorbed the change without reaction. The jet continued forward, engines still roaring, but the attempt was finished. The pilots had reached a conclusion that could not be avoided. This object could not be outrun. It could not be cornered. It could not be chased. Human engineering had reached its limit. And whatever they were observing existed entirely beyond it. The most unsettling moment did not come during pursuit. It came when the object chose proximity. Without warning, it appeared closer than before, far closer than any unidentified craft should ever be. It occupied a position just ahead of the aircraft's flight path, large enough in the forward view to remove all doubt about scale and distance. At this range, even a slight error would have meant collision. Yet the object showed no concern. Its surface details became clearer. Smooth, metallic, continuous, no seams, no panels, no visible structure that suggested how it was built or how it functioned. Light moved across it in an unnatural way, sliding instead of reflecting, as if the surface did not fully agree with the surrounding space. The jet vibrated violently under aerodynamic stress. Wind roared around the fuselage. The aircraft was working constantly to remain stable. The object was not. As the pilots adjusted their heading slightly, the object corrected its position instantly. It did not drift. It did not overshoot. It did not react late. The correction was perfect, as if distance itself were being actively maintained. At one moment, The object hovered just off the canopy line, close enough to fill the pilot's forward view. No collision warning sounded. No pressure wave formed. No air was displaced between them. The space separating aircraft and object felt unnatural, as if the gap itself were being held open deliberately. Seconds passed. Nothing happened. The pilots waited for some indication of interaction. Turbulence, heat, noise, anything that would confirm physical presence beyond sight. There was none. Then the object moved upward. It slid above the aircraft, passing over the canopy in complete silence. The camera tilted to follow. Sunlight flared briefly across the glass. Still, no shadow crossed the jet. No disturbance followed. The object moved as if the aircraft were irrelevant. From above, it hovered again. Below it, the jet's wake twisted violently, a chaotic signature of airflow and force. The object remained untouched, suspended above turbulence that could tear apart conventional craft. For a brief moment, it held that position. Then it shifted sideways, now hovering off the wingtip. The distance remained exact, neither closing nor increasing, perfectly measured. At this range, illusion became impossible. Atmospheric effects failed. Sensor error collapsed. Human perception sharpened. The pilots were no longer dealing with something distant or abstract. This was real, present, controlled, and restrained. The object did not behave aggressively. It did not attempt to collide. It did not test limits recklessly. Its movements were precise and deliberate, suggesting intelligence rather than automation. Finally, it withdrew. Not by accelerating away. Not by turning or climbing. The space between them simply expanded. One moment it was dangerously close. The next, it occupied a distant point in the sky, already beyond immediate threat range. No motion connected the two states. The jet continued forward, shaken but intact. Systems remained stable, airflow returned to baseline. But the meaning of proximity lingered. At that distance, the object had demonstrated something unmistakable. It could approach at will. It could hold position effortlessly. And it could leave without resistance. Which raised a question far more unsettling than hostility. If it could come that close so easily, why did it choose not to do anything else? As the encounter stretched on, the object's behavior shifted again, away from proximity and pursuit, and towards something far more unsettling. It began to ignore orientation itself. At one moment, the object appeared inverted relative to the horizon, not rotating, not tumbling, simply aligned upside down, as if gravity and direction no longer shared the same reference. The sky offered no explanation. Clouds drifted normally. The ocean below obeyed every familiar rule. Only the object refused to align with any of it. Then, without visible motion, its orientation corrected itself. There was no rotation through space. No transition. One moment it was inverted. The next it was not. The air did not react. Sound did not change. The correction happened as if orientation were a variable, not a constraint. Distance began to behave strangely as well. The jet flew forward at constant speed. Yet the object remained ahead, maintaining separation without accelerating. Time passed. Fuel burned. The aircraft moved, but relative position refused to update. Progress became an illusion. At another moment, the object drifted backward while still facing forward. It did not turn to retreat. It did not accelerate away. Distance increased smoothly, without thrust or inertia. The motion felt less like travel and more like repositioning. Then came the visual fracture. For a fraction of a second, the object's outline split into overlapping forms, multiple positions occupying the same space. The effect was brief, precise, and deeply unsettling. Then the outlines collapsed back into one, and the object continued as if nothing had occurred. No distortion lingered. No artifact remained. Instruments showed nothing unusual. Wind noise stayed constant. The environment behaved normally. Only the object refused continuity. Time itself began to feel unreliable. Cloud formations appeared to hesitate. Reflections on the object's surface slid forward, then subtly reversed before continuing again. The pilots could not be certain whether the sky was repeating itself or whether perception was being manipulated. And yet, sound remained linear. The roar of air never looped. Engine noise never stuttered. Electronic hum never reset. If time was being altered, it was happening silently. The object drifted upward again, leaving behind a faint afterimage that lingered for a split second before collapsing into its new position. There was no trail, no motion blur, just the suggestion that it had been somewhere else a moment earlier. Then it stopped. The jet continued forward. The object remained ahead. No matter how long the aircraft maintained speed, the separation did not change. Space itself felt compromised, distance lost meaning, motion no longer guaranteed progress. At this point, the encounter crossed a threshold. This was no longer advanced flight. No longer unknown propulsion. What the pilots were witnessing suggested control over spatial relationships themselves, position, orientation, continuity, all treated as adjustable parameters. And then, just as abruptly as these violations began, they stopped. The object vanished. No retreat. No final maneuver. Just absence. The sky returned to expected behavior. Clouds drifted naturally. The horizon stabilized. Space felt continuous again. But something fundamental had been altered. The pilots had not just observed an unidentified object. They had experienced a moment where the assumptions underlying reality, motion, orientation, and continuity had been quietly, effortlessly suspended. And whatever had done so without force, without struggle, and without explanation. After the object vanished, the sky returned to normal. The aircraft continued its flight path. Clouds drifted as they always had. The ocean rolled endlessly below. Every visible rule of nature reasserted itself without hesitation, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Inside the cockpit, the systems agreed. Displays stabilized. Readings returned to baseline. No warnings appeared. From the perspective of the aircraft, the encounter was over. But the data remained. Radar logs showed tracks that could not be reconciled with known motion. Infrared recordings captured heat signatures without propulsion. Targeting systems documented objects that relocated without acceleration. Timestamps aligned perfectly across independent sensors. This was not a single point of failure. It was consistency. Every system had seen the same thing, from different angles, through different methods, governed by different assumptions, and all of them had reached the same silent conclusion. Something had been there. The pilots did not speculate in the moment. They did not assign meaning. They followed procedure. They recorded what they observed and continued the mission. Training demands discipline, not interpretation. But once the flight ended, the implications became impossible to ignore. No known aircraft can hover without lift. No known craft can move without inertia. No known technology can reverse gravity without interaction. And yet, all of those things had been observed. There was no sign of hostility, no weapons display, no attempt to interfere with the aircraft beyond subtle, controlled electronic influence. The object had approached closely, close enough to destroy the jet if it had chosen to, but it had not. That restraint mattered. Whatever the object was, it did not behave like a weapon. It did not behave like an accident. And it did not behave like a malfunction. It behaved like something aware of boundaries. The most unsettling aspect was not what the object did, but what it demonstrated. It showed that gravity could be ignored. That distance could be adjusted without movement. That orientation and continuity were optional. And it did so calmly, without force, without urgency, and without explanation. The encounter left behind no debris, no physical trace, no visible scar in the sky or sea. Only records. Data that could be replayed, analyzed, slowed down, and scrutinized, yet never fully understood. In science, unanswered questions usually shrink with better tools and clearer measurements. But this encounter suggested the opposite. The more precisely it was observed, the less it fit. The object did not hide. It did not evade detection. It allowed itself to be recorded. And then it left, leaving behind a quiet but unsettling possibility. That the laws we rely on are not broken. They are conditional. And that somewhere above our oceans, something exists that knows exactly when those conditions no longer apply. If you want to explore the mysteries that challenge everything we think we understand about our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel. In the next episode, we dive beneath the surface, literally, into another enigma that defies explanation. The Yonaguni underwater pyramids, ancient man-made structures, are a natural geological illusion. Because some questions do not belong only to the sky. Some of them are waiting in the depths.